Welcome to the Hidden Why Podcast, episode 1108. My interview with Steve Wilson. We're discussing his new book and his journey with bipolar. Enjoy. Hello, Steve, and welcome to the Hidden Why Podcast. Great to have you here today and looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Lee. Looking forward to it myself. I'm doing well.
You're doing well over there in Arizona?
Yes.
And by the sounds of it, ready for a heat wave.
Yes, 45 Celsius.
45 degrees Celsius, 114 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
That's pretty
right.
bloody hot here in Australia.
Well, you have to come and visit me sometime and you'll get a taste of real heat.
Real heat. Yeah. Well, look, welcome to the show and congratulations on your book. This is the first of these kind of conversations on my show. You have bipolar and you've written a book about it. So
yes.
Let me ask the first question about when you first discovered you had bipolar and what that meant.
Well, you have to go, I'm 75 years old. So you have to go back to 1958. I was 9 years old. On Saturdays, I always went to a movie theater with a buddy. They had double features back then. So in between movies, I went up this particular Saturday to get popcorn and Coke. Well, when I went over to the Coke machine, I was in line, stood there to put my dime in. That's what it cost back then. And a guy put it in for me. I didn't know him. And he said to me, can you come help me here in the theater? So I naturally, as a 9-year-old kid, thought he was just a normal guy who worked for the theater. So I said yes. And we walked down the hall. He opened a door. It was a restroom. And he sexually assaulted me.
Oh, God.
Now, the term sexually assaulted means something happened. But when I use the term rape, then everybody knows what happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know what the hell to think. I'd never heard of anything that could happen like that. I didn't know where to look for help. I didn't know if it was my fault. I decided probably was my fault that he picked me out of line. So I was never, ever going to tell anybody what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't for 30 years. After the rape and a few months later, 4th grade, and I went into my first deep depression. And when I say depression, nobody can understand how bad it is. They think of themselves having the blues. Well, it's not that.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to see my friends. I was always a top student, but I quit studying. My grades plummeted. I didn't love anybody. I didn't think anybody loved me. It was a dark, dark nightmare.
Oh, God.
Now, bipolar disorder comes and goes in waves. In other words, I was really hurting when I was in my first depression. It went away in a couple months. So I thought, well, hell, I'm glad that's over with. And turned back to normal, which I had always been, and didn't hit back again for quite a while until 7th grade.
Yep. A few years later.
Pardon me?
A few years later?
Yes. And I went into another deep depression. And this lasted from time to time throughout junior high, throughout high school, and throughout college.
Mm.
I had no idea why it was treating me. It was beating me up. And when I got out of college, it got worse. I became and I started having suicidal ideations. I was at the bottom of the barrel. And what I think was at that time, I was sure that my father didn't give a damn about me. And we had had a very unnatural, uh, well, we just didn't get along at all.
Is
So
that is
one night,
that prior to, is that all the way through your life you didn't get along with your
all the
father,
way
or
through,
was that mostly after the incident?
no, he didn't know about the incident, but it was
No,
way
no.
before that.
But did
He
that
never
change
would,
your perspective of your relationship with your father?
no.
No.
My father never learned of how I felt we were connecting ever.
Okay.
And he died 15, 20 years ago. But anyway, on this one certain night, my mom and dad were having a barbecue. I was about 22 or 23 and having a barbecue in the backyard. My dad and I got into a tough altercation. And before it got out of hand, and the way I was thinking, I called my sister, who got me into a mental institution in Columbus, Ohio.
Hmm.
I was there for 3 weeks. And the big thing that they did for me with a certain medication was stop the suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
After that, it didn't it didn't do anything for my mental illness except for that. So in 1972, they diagnosed me as clinically depressed.
Hmm.
And they tried the existing 4 or 5 medicines, and none of them worked. They all made me terribly sick. So for those years after that, I was in really, really bad shape. I couldn't keep a job. I was angry. Um, I didn't love anybody. I just stood there and sat there rather and watched TV. And when I graduated from college before that, and I went to get a job. I couldn't stay at a job, any job, more than about 6 months. Uh, I either got mad as hell or bored as hell, or I was doing such a lousy job that they fired me.
Hmm.
Everything was going wrong. In 1972, I got married, and I still went through all that agony. Then in 1978, my psychiatrist came in the room and said, I think I made a misdiagnosis. You're
Okay.
bipolar.
Mm.
Well, hell, I never heard of bipolar, didn't have a clue what it was. So they explained it to me. And I'll give the people listening a little idea of what bipolar is. There are
That'd be
two
good.
of them.
Yeah.
There's bipolar 1, which is deep depression, usually followed by a tremendous mania. The person loses control of his thought process, spends all his money, uh, screws up his home life, might buy 2 or 3 cars in a row that he can't afford. Everything is out of control.
Yep.
Then he sinks back down, maybe is normal again, whatever that is. But he looks around and he's or she has completely ruined their lives. I am not bipolar 1. I am bipolar
So
2.
sorry, just with the bipolar one, is that reoccurrent? So you can go through this depression and then this period of
Yes,
mania, followed by
yes,
calmness, and then just repeat it again and again in a
yes.
matter
And
of whatever time.
it could be hell, maybe a year between those
Yep.
episodes,
Yep.
or it could be a month. don't know. But I'm bipolar too, which means I have the deepest of depressions that can last forever, or excuse me, for however it lasts. And then I don't go into a mania. I go into what's called hypomania, which is somewhere between whatever is called normal and the mania. Now, one of the things I've done during my time in hypomania is I took my wife to buy her car. We finished on that. I looked over, saw a car that looked kind of good. And I said, oh, I'll take that one too. So I would continue to do those sorts of things, not out of control, but just automatically would do them without thinking. Well, when they diagnosed me as bipolar, they gave me the medicine lithium, which was and it still is, the super drug for bipolar. And it worked almost right away. Not all the way, about 50% of the way I was better.
Yeah.
And I could then get in the workplace again, and I could hold a job. But I had a lot of things that were still going wrong. One of them was and is a racing mind. And I also have all these years been beat up with if I do something that I perceive is wrong or hurts somebody, I can't get the thought out of my mind until I make it better. Hell, that could be weeks or months, but it's always rolling around in my head. And it's the worst, one of the worst things I've ever gone through. And then in 1978, after a lackluster career, in 2000 rather, another psychiatrist prescribed me with a drug called Paxil, and it got rid of about 80% of the ruminations that race in my mind.
Right.
So since 2000, I've been pretty damn good. Now, I still have problems, but I'm still pretty damn good.
You've come through it.
Yes.
What a journey. And thank you for sharing.
It was a long one. You got to look at it this way, because people don't actually think of 1972 as whatever. But if you put it in years, I have been dealing with it for 50, wait a minute, 28. Yeah, 52 years.
But you're dealing with bipolar.
Yes.
But really, it stems from your first story when you were 9 years old.
Yes. Now, when you talk to psychiatrists or therapists, they have no idea what causes bipolar. It could
Do they
be,
still have no idea?
No. It could have been from the rape. It could have been situational, like dealing with my father. It could have been genetics. They could have all come together. No one ever knows why a person is susceptible to bipolar, because I had all these things going on. Well, the next guy who has the same things going on may not be affected.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's is it like a chemical imbalance? It must be something to do with a chemical imbalance.
Yes, they say that. And I was first informed of that in the 70s. But I don't know what treatment really goes just to the chemical imbalance. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
But I believe it's at least partially true.
Okay. So bipolar, we don't really know the cause for it. It could be a number of factors, trauma, etc., throughout life that brings it upon. Is there any particular age bracket that people usually become aware of it? And is that related to that's when it develops? I said, is there any particular age bracket when bipolar develops, or can it happen anytime in life? It's just based
Well,
on when it's detected.
the average age of onset of bipolar is 25. I know people who are a lot younger than that who get hit with it. So anybody who's going to be susceptible can hit at any time.
Mm-hmm. So it can hit any time. With the hypomania or the mania, depending on bipolar 1 or 2, you go through this period where you don't seem to have control over your behaviors and your actions.
Right.
Can you just describe that a bit further? Like, is there absolutely, like, if your wife was with you when you're buying that car and you said, I want to buy that car too, can she help bring you back in line and make you see reality,
Well,
or is it?
now I was not in mania at the time. That was
Oh,
just what my life became like.
oh,
And luckily I had her to curb what I would like to do. She helped me a lot, but it was not mania. For me, it became the second stage of normalcy.
okay. And is that just a way, do you think, to help deal with the side of depression through finding activities that stimulate, dopamine, for example, to help uplift the spirit?
Well, I don't think that I want you to really grasp what bipolar is like.
Hmm.
Now, for me, it's mostly depression. You can't understand when I describe it. I
Mm-hmm.
can't understand when it started. I knew I followed through on all my doctor's directions, and I kept trying and trying and trying. It's a very long journey for everyone. As you can see, as I said, it took 52 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I'm not going back to 1958. It took 66 years. I started it when I was actually, when I told you before, I started when I was that first diagnosed. But I wish people had a way of understanding what I've been through and what others have been through.
Hmm.
And then one of the reasons I would like to get out is because one of the big things all of us need is support.
Yeah.
Family members, parents, siblings, wives, friends. We need support. We don't need people going, "Oh, you're feeling bad. Why don't you just go take a walk?" That makes all the people I know who have bipolar even worse.
Yeah.
Ever give anyone suffering from mental illness advice. Just surround them with love and comfort them, and that will help a bunch.
Yeah. Okay.
So 2000 came along. I was doing much better. Now, in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, I had, and way before that, I had a clothing store in Ohio, and every Christmas time, I would hire a couple teenagers to work in my store, run errands, wrap packages, because the people who were working for me didn't have time to do those things. So one year I hired a little girl. Her name was Angie. She was very bubbly, very cute, laughed a lot, smiled a lot, had every indication of having a very good life. Then one Saturday morning, the other girl who was working with her, which is actually her best friend, came to see me on a Saturday morning and said, "Oh my God, Angie killed herself last night."
Hmm.
Now, it was totally unexpected.
Young age.
Pardon me?
Young age.
Yeah, she was 16.
Hmm.
And I never found out what happened to her.
Yeah.
But right a few months after that, a college friend of mine who were really close called me and said his son had been just recently caught robbing a house. And he said, this kid has been driving me crazy. He's so depressed. So the police called him. He was a very influential man in his city. And he went over to the police station to pick him up. His son, who was also 16, got out of the car, said, Mom, Dad, I love you, but I can't take it anymore. Pulled out a gun and shot himself and killed himself right on the spot, right in front of his parents.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that affected me a lot because I knew exactly what they were going through because I was a teenager too. So I began speaking to psychology classes in high schools around the Columbus, Ohio area. And I didn't know how widespread it was throughout high schools and junior highs. One day I gave my talk, and I would always ask the kids if they ever wanted to come up and discuss whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
So the first person on this particular day to come up was a really pretty girl. She was a senior. She was the highest ranking student in the senior class. She had scholarships out the wazoo for not only scholastics, but also for sports. And she came up to me and she says, Mr. Wilson, I can't handle it. I'm ready to quit everything. My parents, my teachers, my friends are all telling me I got to go to the best school. I'm the greatest person in the world. They don't want me to want me to let them down. I don't know what to do. I'm at the bottom. I'm suicidal. This is so bad.
Hmm.
Well, all I could do was refer her to a child psychologist friend of mine. The next person, or two or three down the line, came up. She was just a normal student, normal grades, normal kind of athlete, no expectations of being anything great. And she says, Mr. Wilson, I want to die. My parents hate me. I have no friends. I feel terrible. I just want to leave this earth. Now, she's a totally different kid, but she had major problems too.
Yeah.
So that started me when we moved out to Phoenix that was around, as I said, in late 90s, early 2000s. We moved out to Phoenix in 2008. And shortly after our arrival here, I started contacting schools and big mental health organizations because I wanted to work with teenagers. No one would let me. Their answer was I was too old. Now, I've never heard of that, but that's what they said.
Right.
Became a facilitator for 2 mental health support groups, and I've been doing it for 9 years.
Hmm. Nice.
I've seen well over 1,000 people, different people, and that's what I do now.
So
Been doing
what
it for
do you think by starting to do those talks to universities and younger people, do you think that helps you process and deal with your own state of mind?
oh yes.
Yeah. I often find
If
that, huh?
I if what I do helps at least one person, that's the greatest feeling you can get.
But also verbally digesting it, I guess you're processing it in your own head when you're talking about it in a way that's beneficial to others.
Well, the real thing is my heart goes out to them.
Yeah.
I'm not really looking to do anything special for me. I never understood how widespread
Hmm.
a mental illness is.
Yeah.
To give you an idea of how bad it is in the United States, 60 million people out of 330 million have mental illness. 15 or
Hmm.
20 are people under 25. So it is widespread. I've also found out through doing these podcasts, because sometimes I get them, like you're in Australia, I get them in New Zealand or wherever. My observation is that most countries around the world have similar problems,
Stats.
numbers with
Yeah.
children, adults.
Yeah. Yeah. It's becoming a bit of a pandemic globally. Yeah.
Yes.
And what are your thoughts on, as far as treatment goes? Usually, for most things in this world, it's medication.
Well,
It doesn't seem anyway, and I'm not an expert in this area, so don't quote me on this, and I don't have mental illness or have too much experience in it, but from what I gather is that medication seems to be the tonic for most things, and rather than treat it, it actually just numbs it, and doesn't actually improve.
well, I'll tell you what, if you get the right medication,
Yeah.
and speaking of medication,
Hmm.
it is a guessing game.
Right.
What works for me doesn't automatically work for somebody else.
Yeah.
What they find that works might not help me.
Okay.
And then there's the other thing. Only 50% of mental illness patients receive any help from medication.
Okay.
So here we are with 30 million of that 60 million don't get any help through medication. So what do they have to turn to? Let's ask, first of all, why a lot of those 30 million never attempt anything. They just live their lives as miserable as they always are. There's a lot of reasons for that. One, they try medication. If it doesn't work right away, they give up and never go back to their therapist. Number two, they'll try medication. It starts working. It continues to work. And then they decide, hell, I don't need this medication anymore. They stop it on their own. And
Mm.
sooner or later, they get bad again.
Yep.
Number three, they don't try at all. They just think that nothing anybody can do about it. It's my life. I got to live with it.
Mm.
Now, here in the United States, we've got a couple other things that hurt people, cause them not to get better. First one is the insurance industry. In the US, they've made it so difficult for mental health patients to be able to afford to get adequate help. And there are a couple reasons for that. They've made it so difficult for the professionals by cutting the money that they get from the insurance industry, which causes the therapists to have to raise their prices. So in the US, I don't know what you would equate this to,
Mm.
but I would say an average therapist or psychiatrist is somewhere between $100 and $150 per session. So I can afford it, made a good living, but there are millions of people who can't even afford to do it. So they've knocked them out of the ability to get any service. So that's when the government comes in. They say we're setting up, and they did set up clinics around the United States,
Mm-hmm.
which people can qualify for if, number one, they make less than $20,000 a year from the disability that goes with the clinics. And the service in the clinics is so overwhelmed that any of those people making a slim living, there's so many of them that the clinics are so overwhelmed that I had a buddy in my group who was really bad shape, suicidal and all that. And he had his clinic. He was on disability, and he went to the clinic the first time. It told him how bad he was. And they said, our next opening is in a week. Well, what did he do for a week? He was suicidal, and he had nowhere to go, no help.
Yeah.
He became homeless.
Yes.
Now, this disability thing in the U.S., remember, you can't make over $20,000. Well, another friend of mine in the group decided he was feeling well enough so he'd get a new job, just part-time. And he started making about $15,000 a year. Disability found out about it. And since he was making over $20,000 with the two combined, they took his disability away. So he went in to better himself and ended up having $5,000 less a year.
Yeah.
So that's how it is in the U.S.
Bit of a rigged system.
Government says they're working on it. Hell, they're not doing near enough.
No, I gather that. Steve, you've obviously got this book coming out, so I want to point people in the direction of that, and I'll stick a link in the show notes, everyone listening, at thehiddenwhy.com, so you can Google this episode and find a link to the book, Teetering on a Tightrope, My Bipolar Journey by Steve W. Wilson. Is there some way people can reach out to you, Steve, if they wanted to ask you any questions?
Well, the best place to get it is on Amazon.
Yeah, but is there some way for people to reach you if they wanted to speak to you?
Coming next.
Yeah.
They can email me. I don't give out my phone number or text.
No, fair enough.
They can email me at swwilson.wilson@gmail.com.
Can you say that once more?
swwilson.wilson@gmail.com.
Excellent. Guys, we'll stick that in the show notes. Steve, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time today to share your story. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. I hope people get something out of it.
We get something out of every episode, and I appreciate you sharing so much.
Thank you.
Guys, check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon. Thanks, guys, for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. I hope you love what you're hearing. If you like this episode, guys, or any of the episodes that you're listening to here at The Hidden Why, please do me a favor by sharing it. You can share it with your families, you can share it with your loved ones. You can do that by using your favorite social media channels, using the icons on the platform that you're listening to The Hidden Why podcast. Also, guys, if you're a fan of the show, please connect with me. Connect with me at thehiddenwhy.com. I love to hear from you. I love to converse with the people that listen to this show to find out what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, and perhaps if they have any questions or feedback for the show as well. You can stay up to date with all that I'm releasing here, guys. I do a solo show every Monday, a 3-minute thought every Thursday. I do 2 interviews a week on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and a book review every Friday. You can stay up to date with all that by subscribing to my newsletter at thehiddenwhy.com. Just enter your email address there, and also subscribing to the podcast on the platform that you choose to listen to your podcast. You can also support the show, guys, by using the Amazon links at thehiddenwhy.com. So if you like books, you can get all the books that I review there. and anything else really that you like to purchase through Amazon. So use that link, it helps support the show. And we've also got a deal with Audible, guys. Audible is a fantastic way to listen to all your favorite books. We've got a deal with them so you can get 2 free books when you subscribe, or subscribe to a 30-day free trial. So check that out again at thehiddenwhy.com. Guys, that's it from me. You know what to do. Go out there, breathe more passion into every single moment. Do everything with greater purpose. And in doing so, you will discover your hidden why. This is The Hidden Why. My name is Lee Martinuzzi. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.